Hi, this is Mike from Resolute. Thanks for joining me today. Today, I've got Veli Pehlivanov, the co-CEO and Chief Technology Officer of Resolute Software, my employer, and we're going to have a quick talk about the need to modernize. Now, Veli, if you go to Resolute's website, you're going to find a whole bunch of stuff about the need to modernize, but it kind of almost sounds like a, hey, upgrade, spend some more money pitch. I mean, my gosh, you've got last year's car, you need to buy this year's car. Seriously, do we really need to modernize, Veli?
So if you have last year's car, you probably don't need to modernize, right? But if your car gets like 10 miles per gallon, breaks down constantly, and is very hard to repair due to lack of mechanics nearby, then maybe you should modernize, right? You should replace that car. Of course, that's a very simplistic analogy, but one that draws the picture. It's now been a few decades since businesses started massively running on software, right? That's a long time of change in business dynamic, user needs, and technology opportunities to be running on the same set of software features.
Well, so let's say that I just don't plan on adding any new features. If what I've got already running, my existing features, works fine, then I really don't need to worry about modernizing, do I?
No, maybe not, but there are certain technology factors that endanger even unchanging, resilient, stable systems in time, right? And two of the most important technology headwinds that we have seen in our experience is first technology obsolescence and then engineer preference or the availability of development talent for that specific technology. And if we take, for example, a technology like Delphi, this was a very hype piece of tech some 30 years ago, right? And a lot of engineers use that tech to build very resilient, very stable applications in those years that might be running up to today. However, from today's perspective, this technology is now by and large considered to be a legacy, and hardly any new projects would be recommended to start on it. So equally, young engineers want to learn modern tech that is hype, that is interesting, that everyone talks about, right? Tech like JavaScript, .NET, Python, or Go. And then this makes your Delphi application increasingly hard to maintain purely because of the lack of readily available talent on the market. So chances are, even if you have a stable application running for years, it's getting increasingly hard to maintain well, and ultimately you risk breaking it and hurting your business in the process.
Well, so I've only got so much budget to spend, though. If I really want to focus on maximum customer satisfaction, wouldn't I be better served just going ahead and adding new features as opposed to modernizing, particularly if the stack works? I mean, so I might have a lot of older developers working for me. Fine, I can manage that. I'd rather have the new features.
Right. Well, it's again like this last year's car analogy, right? If you have an old car that is constantly in for engine repairs, do you just repaint the exterior and consider that ready for, let's say, cross country ride? Right? I don't think so. You probably want to first make sure it can survive the mileage and get you to your destination safely in one piece. So if we go back to the software industry, it's very similar. Adding better user experiences and shiny new screens, visual eye candy, it's very nice, but it doesn't address the primary problems with maybe your non-functional requirements like performance, maintainability, extensibility, all of these being implicit characteristics of high-quality software that you need for your business. So that's what modernization does. If you take it in an isolated example, it creates good foundations for your system and makes changing your system in the future easier and safer. You don't want something that just looks modern, right? You want it to work modern and stand the test of time.
So instead of just kind of, I get it, adding new features to your old server stack might be a little bit like putting lipstick on a pig, right? It makes it look prettier, but it doesn't really change what you've got. Um, can modernization really make a difference with my old stack software? For example, one of the problems that I've had in some of the older stacks that I've managed is new security threats show up. Some of the new features that we develop actually start taking down some of my old features. Can modernization promise me that I'll have a safer stack on which to add new features in the future, or am I just doubling my complexity?
So hopefully, if you do the modernization right, you are removing complexity, even though you may have an already complex system that has been in service for many years, and thus a lot of functionality, a lot of complexity has been added on it. You still should be able to simplify that system through modern technologies. I mean, isn't that the basic tenet of modern technologies, making your life easier regardless of how complex your systems get, right? For example, there's this common conception about the entire architecture that basically decouples your system or system components in tiers and makes them maintainable separately on their own without affecting one another. So, for example, when you modernize your backend, you can isolate functional parts of your code so that they can each run independently of one another. If one goes down, the other keeps running and is happily isolated in their own mini environment. And I would say that constitutes a major positive value added from a modernization exercise like this, because you have broken down the system in a way that adding additional functionality or even breaking things, right, do not affect the entire system and do not pose a major risk for your system and your operations.
So, I think you're making an analogy to, deploying inside containers or deploying in separate virtual machines. And that makes sense because, if you have your billing server in one container and you have your scheduling server in a different container, your billing server is very unlikely to take down your scheduling server. Even if you've got a lot of problems with your billing server, now you can deal with that separately. But having all of these containers now, as opposed to just, quite frankly, just one application to which I just keep adding features and services. Sure, everyone calls that this monolithic, stack of spaghetti code. But honestly, for the smaller businesses, my one developer knows what's going on there. He doesn't really want to complicate things by adding a bunch of containers and microservices. So is that really making his job easier? Is technology really helping him by going in that direction?
Right. So technology can be overwhelming for sure, especially modern technology where there's a lot of moving pieces and a lot of specific point products and mini tech that developers are now expected to know and work with. But at the end of the day, modernization is about your technology, your product, and your staff being ready for change, isn't it? So can you add services without putting line of business features at risk, right? Or can you implement new features quickly with fewer developers? How easily can you substitute the underlying technology of your app if required? Or if I can summarize.
Well, hold on. Substitute the underlying technology of my app. Yeah, talk to me about that one.
Yeah, well, look at what happens everywhere in tech. We have this new hype technology appearing somewhere that all developers jump onto. And then, I don't know, 3 years, 5 years in time, there's something better. Now everyone wants to be on the new tech. Look at Silverlight versus Blazor today, right? Or even Angular JS 1.x versus Angular, modern Angular, right? 2 onwards.
Yeah.
Now up to 12 or 13. So every new piece of technology nowadays makes another piece obsolete in a way, right? Which means that if you're the unlucky one to run on the old technology, you may realistically end up needing to substitute that tech for something more modern. Now, the question comes down to, can you do this cost efficiently without hurting your business? How many developers do you need? Do they need to re-qualify? What happens if you are unable to source the engineering talent that is required for this type of change? Modernization tries to address all these concerns with practical solutions that make sense for the business, which means that they need to be cost effective. They need to be the budget of that change or the cost of that change should be justifiable by whatever business outcome that you are trying to reach.
Yeah, but I mean, Belly, most of most of the companies out there don't have this IT crystal ball. And, rewind a little bit. And I like how you brought up Silverlight. When Silverlight was first introduced, it sounded like it was just going to be absolutely fantastic. So imagine spending a lot of money adopting Silverlight, and then a handful of years later, Silverlight's being deprecated. I could waste a lot of money trying to modernize. How do I make sure that I'm not wasting my money now when I modernize?
Yeah, so I would call this the proper due diligence phase, right? So this is about picking technologies that are not just the hype of the day, but some that has probably the biggest potential of standing the test of time. And making technology decisions that are tailored to your specific business needs. Obviously, you are working with what you got. So if your developer X is proficient in technology Y, chances are he's going to want to transition everything to technology Y because this is probably what he knows best. But this may not always be the prudent decision on the business side, right? Exactly because of the previously stated reasons. So what we do at Resolute, for example, we have our own preferences, of course, and our own specialization in terms of technologies of choice, but we try to be better than just sticking to our preferences. We do a lot of technology analysis. We do gap analysis between current technology state for our clients versus their desired state. And we try to pick technologies that probably have quite good potential for being around in the next 5, 10, 15 years. Technology like .NET, Angular, modern JavaScript, or modern C#. This allows us to really employ industry-tested libraries and technologies that we believe are going to be around for another decade of efficient usage, and thus not only solve the technical challenges of today or deliver the business functionality that the client needs, but also reduce the total cost of ownership of that piece of software beyond the active development phase and into long-term maintenance, optimization, and then sunsetting.
Well, it sounds good. I like the idea of being able to deploy new features with less risk to my existing stack. I like, I guess having someone I can ask, like, I could ask you questions about, is .NET Core gonna last? I mean, is it going to be appropriately multi-platform to stick around for a while? Can I build my business on this? I can ask you a lot of those questions and get some straight answers. I like the fact that I'll actually be able to hire younger developers because this is what the latest stuff they know. So that sounds good. I've just got one last thing that's kind of bugging me about modernizing. My existing stack is huge, and I can't imagine trying to disassemble that entire thing to modernize it, to turn it into microservices and containers. It's just, I don't want to spend the next year of my IT department's life and budget trying to disassemble this monolithic thing I've got while I still need to run the business. What do I do?
So I would say put this task on the plate of people who can really get the job done without creating more headache than necessary, right? A lot of times businesses struggle to modernize efficiently because they think that whatever they have been doing for the last 15, 20, 30 years is going to be sufficient for the next generation of either business requirements or technology requirements. Unfortunately, this is rarely the case, and it takes a good amount of really forward thinking to realize that maybe you need to change the technology strategy completely and then start by employing people that understand what the implications of this change are for your business and how they can lead your business through this change. And this is exactly what we specialize at Resolute. If you think about it, we don't just write software, right? We're developers, designers, and creative and marketing people, but before anything else, we're business consultants, which means that we come in to analyze your business situation holistically and then recommend a set of changes that we have a very high degree of confidence your business is going to be better off doing versus not doing. And even if you don't do anything else beyond that, that's at least a blueprint of your organizational change or your technology change that you might consider adopting in the near term or midterm. And then if you decide to pull the trigger, Resolute can definitely help you go through that change with the necessary technical, creative, and business talent. We also like to work a staged approach most of the times for anything but probably the smallest of modernization projects, because we do realize that businesses need to continue operating while change is happening in the organization or in the software systems. And you have to have the legacy, stable, mature system working and at the same time coexisting with the new bits and pieces that are evolving in time. Just that type of advantage, that type of challenge in its own is sometimes overwhelming for businesses that either pull the trigger all at once and then risk losing everything that they have piled for years and introduce a major change in their operation that may not be always successful, or conversely, take years to develop something that is never ready because it doesn't keep up with the pace of change that is happening in the business. So we understand implications like this beyond just writing software, and we're willing to help businesses realize those, work around them, and then create better strategic plans for technology modernization.
Well, that sounds actually pretty good to me, and it sounds a whole lot better than just putting a fresh coat of paint on the car before dumping a lot of features into it. So, no, that sounds great, Veli. And if you want to learn more about this, feel free to go ahead and click the link that's on the screen. Thank you very much. And stay tuned and join us next time.